Thank you for joining us today on our Wonderful Day in the Lord broadcast. Our task this week on our broadcast will be to go through Revelation chapter 16, and here we're finding what is known as the bowl judgments, the last series of judgments God pours out on the earth during the tribulation period. We have been in between these judgments for a while. This is actually the six bowls, or seven bowls, are actually the seventh judgment that is pertaining to the trumpet judgments. The seventh trumpet judgment is the seven bowl judgments. So that's what we're looking at as we open up chapter 16. In verse 1 it says this, "Then I heard a loud voice from the temple, saying to the seven angels, Go and pour out on the earth the seven bowls of the wrath of God." A number of things we'd highlight here. First of all, we saw at the end of chapter 15 that the glory of the Lord had filled the temple or the tabernacle in heaven to such a degree that nothing could be in that temple because of the powerfulness of God's glory. And so we find that coming from the temple, a voice coming from the temple has to be the voice of God himself. There's no other being in the temple. And so the loud voice is the voice of God. And he's speaking to the seven angels. He sends forth seven angels now to bring about these final judgments on the earth. And one other thing we would observe here is that this is a singular command. He's not commanding each individual angel to go pour out their bowls, but he's commanding them collectively. That implies to us that these judgments are going to happen very rapidly, one right after the other, or perhaps some of them simultaneously. So we don't have a great deal of lag time between these judgments. They could have happened in a matter of hours or days. So it's not a great periods of time in between them. We start with the first bowl judgment in verse 2. "So the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and it became a loathsome and malignant sores on the people who had the mark of the beast and who worshipped his image." These malignant sores, we're not exactly sure what they are, but this particular word is translated in the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament Bible, as boils, and very similar, if not the same thing, that Job experienced back in the book of Job. I don't know how many of you have ever had boils before. I had them, a whole series of them when I was about in junior high age, and they are very painful, very uncomfortable things to have. And so we have a group of people that are just filled with these boils, these very painful skin conditions. And notice, though, however, that these sores that come upon the people are not on everybody on the earth, but only on those who have the mark of the beast and who worship his image. So these are the followers of the Antichrist who receive these painful boils or malignant sores at this time. Sores. Verse 3. "The second angel poured out his bowl into the sea, and became like blood, like that of a dead man, and everything in the sea died." Now we're starting to see in these particular judgments some very similar occurrences that happened earlier in especially the trumpet judgments. For example, in chapter 8, verse 8, at the second trumpet judgment, we had a judgment pertaining to the sea in which a third of it became blood and a third of the creatures in the sea died. Now this time, and remember this is going to be right at the end of the tribulation period, just prior to the coming of Christ, this time everything in the sea dies, everything, all of the sea becomes like blood. So we have an intensification this time of what happened earlier in the earlier trumpet judgment. In verse 4, we have the third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and the springs of waters, and they became like blood. So once again, we have a very similar happening to what happened in the trumpet judgments. Back in chapter 8, verses 10 and 11, at the third trumpet judgment, we had this judgment being poured out on the fresh waters of the earth. And once again, a third of them were contaminated, and many people died as a result. But this time, we find that at the third bowl judgment, that apparently all the springs of fresh water are contaminated at this time. And so there's no fresh water apparently left. It says in verse 5, "And I heard the angel of the waters say, Righteous are you, who are and who were, O Holy One, because you judged these things. And they poured out the blood of the saints and the prophets and you have given them them blood to drink, and they deserve it. And I heard the altar saying, Yes, O Lord God, the Almighty, true and righteous are your judgments. And so we find here the Lord being worshipped for judgment once again by the heavenly beings who recognize that God's wrath, God's judgment against sin is something that is righteous and right and is deserving upon those that is poured out upon. So that's our third bowl judgment. We'll pick up the fourth and the fifth next time. I hope you can join us. You have a wonderful day in the Lord.